Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? So I'd like to start this talk by asking everyone to close your eyes. So if you could just take a moment, close your eyes. I can see everyone in the room, so I can check if you're cheating. And I'd like you to just imagine what war looks like, perhaps what World War II looks like for a European experience. Maybe you see bombings in cities, maybe you see camps, maybe you see battlefronts. And then I'd like you to think about what post-World War II Europe looks like. What are the images, what are the tropes, what are the messages of peace that you can see in your mind's eye? How does it look? Does it make you think of just the security that you had walking or cycling here today? And I'd like you to shift your imagination to go to Africa, this huge continent, so diverse, but yet somehow seen in very singular ways in the media. And I'd like you to go to different war zones, perhaps Liberia, Sudan, Angola. Maybe it's familiar to you, maybe you can't even place it on a map. And then I'd like you to think about the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And then I'd like you to open your eyes. Is this the war image you were expecting? Is this what you might think that a country with statistics about rape and cholera and displaced persons and decades of war and tens of thousands of peacekeeping forces looks like? Well, the reality is that we often think about war and peaceable conditions and report on these contexts in a way that sort of thinks about them as a state. Okay, well, the Democratic Republic of the Congo is the size of Western Europe. And that even in wartime, you still have peaceable situations. So JP Mika is an artist, a Congolese artist, and he lives in Kinshasa. And he's shown this work at a contemporary art fair in London. And so his conflict reality as a Congolese that might be subsumed into the kind of statistics that we hinge our stories on doesn't necessarily hold. And so by seeing the world of the Congo through JP Mika's eyes, it helps us understand a little bit more the complexities, what the world looks like for him, how people might still dance amongst the chaos. And then I'd like to take you to a place that's a little bit more close to home for me, which is in Uganda, where I've lived and worked and curated exhibitions for the last several years, and worked a lot with artists as a way to help understand and abstract and illustrate what it means to have, you know, several dozen armed groups active, to have war that's impacted almost every part of the country, to have armed groups that are still committing crimes just across the border, to have the ICRC says 12,000 are still missing. And yet it's a peaceful country. We report on it as a peaceful state. So what is this tension? And for this particular artist who was born at a time when there wasn't war, you can see the kind of layers of memory. You can see the confusion. And you can see how there's this sort of understanding of violence that still permeates into our peacetime. And justice and reconciliation are a part of this. And so I'd like to then just shift us a little bit to something a bit more familiar, in a sense. To say that understanding peace and seeing peace, particularly through different artists' eyes, looks different in different ways, and understanding justice can be magnified 5, 10, 15, 20 or more years. So the verdict that was rendered last week, and the artist that has done this portrait which is part of a larger collection, is actually an American artist. Doesn't have an individual connection, but is linked to this process of justice and to this idea that we kind of all have a stake in global peace. And as we were hearing earlier about, the global war on terror, there might not be a peace agreement to report on. There might not be a cessation of hostilities that we can reference. But artists will continue to see those everyday lived realities, will continue to express them in ways that we might not have statistics or data to look at. And they will go beyond levels that we might expect. And they will teach us things that we might not be able to put in words, or that our stereotypes might have to break out from. So I'd just like to take us to one last image, which is the same artist collection, and return to my other home, Uganda, and look at Dominic Ongwen, who was a child soldier and is now on trial at the International Criminal Court. And when we look at this image, I hope that we can see a humanity in it, that we don't just see the crimes that he's being charged for, the court proceedings that might discuss the horror, but think about what the peacetime is for Uganda, and think about what it means to see the hollow haunting in the reversal, the monochrome image, and to see the sort of realistic humanity, to look into the eyes of an individual. And this is something that I think artists help us do in a different way. Because for Bradley McCallum, he's reworked the image, even though it seems like it could be exactly realistic. But the eyes, the definitions, the way that it draws you in, calls you to look at Ongwen and to think about him. So as we're reporting on these issues and trying to think about what peace means and how our different senses of humanity might look like, and what the everyday dancing or the long-term painful justice or the residue of memory is, how about we call on artists, and especially visual artists, because we're bombarded with images, still images, moving images, and we want it to be so real, but we don't know if it's actually real. We can't always, triangulate the data, but we can feel that sense of humanness, that sense of similarity, and visual artists help us do that. Thank you.